Today on Cryptological, you join me on the market overview page, which boils down a lot of the charts into simple values to give you a good overview of what's going on without having to trawl through charts and data of going back years and years and years. It's on a color-coded scale, so the closer to red we get, the hotter generally that indicator is, and closer to blue, the colder it is, which obviously correlates to market bottoms and market tops, or overbought and oversold parts of the market cycle. The reason I'm making this video today is because one of the indicators here caught my eye. If we scroll down here to the cycle length section, you see here we calculate the cycle length remaining based on the average of the previous two cycles, cycle 2 and cycle 3. So we omit cycle 1 because there were kind of two peaks. It was almost like two very small cycles combined, and it just skews a bit of the data and makes it look not so useful. So cycle 2 and cycle 3 were very similar in many ways, especially in length. So if we take an average of those and then compare it to how many days we've been from various points, so we can either calculate from the cycle low, from the halving, or from the peak of the previous cycle. And if we look at these, how many days we got left, we can see from the halving, we've now come down to 0 days. So we've reached the average length of the previous two cycles now. So what does this mean? Well, probably not a lot in the short term. Let's click this link up here and then go and have a look at the relative chart. So this is measuring from the halving. And if we get rid of cycle 1, have a look where we are now, we can see cycle 2 is behind where we currently are, cycle 3 is in front of where we currently are. We're sitting right in the middle, which is why we are now at 0 days. So if it's telling us that the end of the cycle is coming up, which these indicators are, so what does the end of the cycle generally look like? What's it look like these past 2 times, or the past 3 times, depending on how far we want to go back? Let's have a look at some other ways we can try and tell when the market top is in. If we look at the sentiment, go over to the fear and greed chart. So we can see that we stayed in extreme greed for a very long time in the previous cycle, all the way up basically. It was there for going back to, all the way back from July 2020 up to the April 2021 peak. That's a long time to stay in that level. This cycle we've only been there for not too long. We can see just the difference visually. Look at all the green dots here, and then we're starting to get going, and then we sort of drop out of these top levels, and then we start to get going again, and then drop back out the top levels. Pi cycle top is another favorite top indicator that's been very useful over the last 2 cycles or 3 cycles. So in the 111-day simple moving average and the 350-day times 2 simple moving average crossover, that's where the indicated top of the cycle has been. And it was pretty close here where they cross. It's pretty close here where they cross back in 2013 cycles. And then they crossed over right here at the top of the 2017 cycle. And then they crossed over for the first peak of 2021, right around the top, but they didn't get anywhere near for the second peak. And they haven't got anywhere near this peak either. Other ways we can try and determine market tops traditionally has been the risk level. We can see it flashed here in 2013 for both peaks. It was up really high up in the risk levels to 0.9 to 1. And in 2017, it was right up there, 0.9 to 1. Then also 2021 first peak, it was up there in the almost 0.9, 0.8, 0.89, 0.9. Where was it actually? 0.92 is where it peaked. Again, it didn't flash for the second peak. It was only up around 0.56. And since this cycle has started, from the bottom, the highest we've made so far has been about 0.71 0.71 so far, and now we're at 0.47. We're nowhere near the top. So we're running out of time traditionally based on average cycle length, but we're not running out of time based on price action, it would seem. Another way we can look at top indicators is the Bitcoin bubble indicator, which plots the extension between Bitcoin's price and the 20-week moving average. So we can see obviously diminishing returns where we had massive extensions in the past, generally getting smaller and smaller. But if we get rid of the higher levels of extension and then we look at the sort of 75 to 100% and lower, we can see that diminishing returns doesn't necessarily appear to be that readily apparent at these levels. And we haven't yet flashed up into the 75 to 100% extension above the 20-week moving average yet. We're not there, we're just nowhere near. So that being the case, what does generally happen around October, where we are now, in the post-halving year of Bitcoin's 4-year cycle? Well, if we head on back to the pi cycle top and zoom in, where are these peaks occurring? This peak is occurring in April. So that's nothing to do with October. What about the second peak? Okay, that peak was in December. So let's rewind back until we get to about April. October. October started right around here, which also was a local low for Bitcoin. And you can see that there was a massive spike up all the way up through October, through November, into early December, before it peaked out. Then in 2017, this peak was also December. So then you rewind back to October, right from the start again. So the local low there, analogous to the one that we had in 2013, was in September, not October. But you fast forward to October, the price hasn't really gone up too much. And then you look at what happens after October comes. We're just going up. It's almost a parabolic move up at this point. And then the same thing in November. And then the December peak, about halfway through December this time. Okay, so what about the last cycle? The first peak was in April, similar to the 2013 peak. So not relating to our October timeframe. Second peak, which was the actual all-time high and the proper peak, how we should determine it, although it doesn't flash on the pi cycle indicator, was in November. So then we head back down to October and we can see, yeah, the price was pretty much at around a local low at the end of September, early October time. And the price went parabolic. So in Q4 of the post-halving year, especially starting around October, you generally see quite explosive moves to the upside for Bitcoin. What have we seen so far? The local low here at the end of September, similar to what we've seen in the last two cycles. And October starts, along with a pretty strong move to the upside. So another way we can have a look at this is on the monthly average. Now the data is skewed because it starts from the beginning of the data set for Bitcoin, where we already saw on the market cycles chart very early data with a very low market cap. The price is very volatile, and it's not very useful. So we can actually filter the start year from 2013 and then have a look at how far out we're going to measure from, the average ROI from. So if we start with 4 years, we can see October is kind of, middle of the range. It does okay. But we're talking about much shorter time frame moves because we're coming up to the end of the cycle. So let's go down to the other end. Well, let's start 180 days after. Okay, looks like October isn't very high, about middle of the range again in terms of its ROI, its return on investment. 90 days. Well, okay, now it's looking like October could be a significant month. And if you think about it, market peaks, they're normally followed by a pretty sharp drop-off in price, a pretty sharp retracement, a collapse in the price after the peak, where the bear market begins with a bang, basically. On this shorter time frame, 90 days, Bitcoin, October is still pretty a good month for Bitcoin. What if we go even shorter? Let's go to 30 days. October is now the best month for ROI over a 30-day time frame, which is very interesting. What we saw on the Pi cycle top chart was the explosive moves starting around September, or a low around September, explosive moves all the way through October, November up to a December peak was quite a common theme. So on a 30-day time frame, October had a pretty good ROI. Then as you get longer, it starts to fall off, which you could argue could be the bear market coming in. So it looks like, despite the fact that the length indicators are telling us that the cycle is coming to a close pretty soon, these things aren't to be taken as gospel, and we've still got 11 and 23 days depending on which point you measure the cycle length from. The other top signals aren't flashing, but if we get an October that we've seen traditionally before in Q4 of the post-halving year, then it looks like the top indicators are probably going to be closer to flashing than they are now. How close they get remains to be seen. I'm not sure the risk level is going to go up as high as we saw in the previous 3 cycle tops. I just can't imagine it getting there. I think if it does get up there, the price is going to correspond to a value over 300,000, which is highly optimistic in my opinion. I think we're probably going to be closer to 150 to 180. And that would probably correspond to a risk level of around 0.7, maybe 0.75, 0.8, if you're pushing it. But either way, traditionally, if Bitcoin just does what it's done throughout its history, then we're looking at a pretty good October coming up. And then some of the cycle top indicators are probably going to start getting closer to their traditional values that correspond with the higher price of Bitcoin. Anyway, if you found any of this interesting, subscribe to the channel. There's loads of these charts and indicators available on cryptological.app. If you like it, you can head over there and just have a free account to have access to some limited features, or subscribe for, £10, $13 a month, and then you get full access to all the premium features, everything on the chart, including things that I'm going to be adding over time as I keep developing the site out. Anyway, thanks for watching today. Until next time, take care.